Good morning and thank you for joining us for our weekly seminar. Our speaker this morning is Professor Kerstin Jordaan. She did her PhD at Wits and has worked at Victoria University and is currently at UNISA, where she is a distinguished professor in the College. She is a distinguished professor in the College of Economic and Management Science, and she is currently the acting director of the School of Economic and Financial Sciences. She is also well known in the South African maths community generally due to her involvement in both past involvement in SAMS, South African Maths Society, and her involvement with the South African Maths Foundation. Yes.
So good morning to everybody attending the talk. I would like to thank the CoE-MaSS for inviting me to speak about a program that is very close to my heart, the Siyanqoba Regional Olympiad Mathematics Olympiad Training Program, which is run by the South African Mathematics Foundation. And many of you will know that for a few years, for 6.5 years actually, I was part-time executive director of the South African Maths Foundation. So I saw this program go through some changes, specifically also the difficult time related to COVID and funding gaps, etc. And I want to give you some perspective of what happened in the past, how the program originated, what the aims were, then also the present, but including also the time of recovery from COVID. And then most importantly, I want to focus on the future of the program and our vision of the initiative, which I think it can grow into a lot more than what it currently is. So, just need to change my slide. So that's the outline of my talk. It's divided into 3 sections. First, the past, how the program began and what it achieved in its early years. Second, the present, which as you can see, I'm counting for 5 years from 2020. But how it has been operating recently under very challenging conditions. And finally, the future, involving our vision for expansion and transformation and sustainability of the program going forward. So, how did Siyanqoba start, or what is Siyanqoba? It has a click, actually. I'm not very good at saying that click. It was launched by the South African Maths Foundation in 2011 as an outreach initiative for high school learners with a strong interest and ability in mathematics. The focus of the program is on enrichment and problem solving. It is not curriculum-based. The primary purpose of the program for the South African Maths Foundation is, originally definitely was for Olympiad, mathematics Olympiad training. But in my opinion, it can be seen in a much wider sense as a learner development and enrichment initiative, and also as a way to draw more learners into mathematics, to take mathematics at school as opposed to maths literacy, and also to draw them into STEM careers. So I will share with you the story of its beginnings, the impact it has had over more than a decade, and where we hope to take it next. So I think as a motivation for its origins, most of us are very aware of the challenges in South African maths education. So some of these include a shortage of well-trained teachers, unequally distributed quality of teaching across schools. The most qualified teachers typically like to work in the urban areas as opposed to the rural areas. And then also limited opportunities for learners to engage with in advanced problem solving. Something that various initiatives are trying to address at the school level, in terms of the way that mathematics is taught at school. There is a framework for teaching mathematics for understanding that was written by various experts where the Maths Foundation was also involved. That is it isn't launched yet by the Department of Basic Education. They first did a pilot study of how they can implement it in schools, and that it hasn't been launched across all schools yet. But even just doing that at school level would already help to strengthen the focus on understanding mathematics rather than an algorithmic approach. But while that's not there in the whole system yet, the Siyanqoba program is playing a role to bring this into the system, at least for those talented learners that have access to the program. The challenges in the maths education system leave many learners underprepared for higher education or for careers in science, technology, and finance. So I've been speaking about the South African Maths Foundation, and I can't assume that everybody necessarily knows what it is. So that was created to play a leadership role in addressing gaps in education. It was originally it was started in 2004 as a cooperation between the South African Maths Society and the Association for Mathematics Educators of South Africa. And they came together to work together through the Maths Foundation, and they focus on expanding the base of mathematics excellence through competitions and outreaches and educator development. So they have many activities and projects, and I'm really only focusing on one today, which is the Siyanqoba project. So as I mentioned before, that the Siyanqoba was born in 2011, and the idea was that it would be a regional training program called the Olympiads, and very simple idea, but very powerful, to establish training centers at universities and schools to recruit talented learners and give them access to enrichment classes that go far beyond the school curriculum. The aim was not remedial teaching, so the goals of the program was it's not remedial teaching, it's not acceleration going through the curriculum faster, it's not an additional year of mathematics, it's not the beginning of first year mathematics. It's really enrichment. And we wanted to develop higher order, independent thinking, creativity, and problem solving beyond the curriculum. The kind of skills that are needed to compete in national and international Olympiads, and ultimately to succeed in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics fields, i.e. to build the pipeline from school to university in mathematics. So these goals of the program are completely in line with the plans for the National Entity for Mathematical Sciences that we are busy working on establishing, that's going to arise from the CoE-MaSS and the SAT, as well as the National Graduate Academy for Maths and Statistical Sciences. The collaboration of these three entities, which we are developing into a National Institute for Mathematical Sciences, entails that SANT will work closely with the universities to strengthen the pipeline from schools to universities, thus ensuring the inclusion of the earlier stages of the education pipeline on which its success ultimately depends, and acknowledging the foundational role of that mathematics education plays in sustaining postgraduate training, research capacity, or knowledge exchange. The academic leadership of the program is it was originally developed in 2011 and coordinated by Professor Evelyn Pillay. Still to this day is involved with the program. He's been with the project since the start, and he's really the heart of what's driving You will know his book, The Mathematics Olympiad Province, which has become the backbone of the program. Because I need to highlight what Siyanqoba is not. I had said this before, but just to emphasize that it is not a remedial course. It is not a bridging program from school to university, and it is not university preparation as such. It is enrichment. It's designed to challenge learners and stretch their thinking beyond the standard curriculum and change the way that they address problems, how they focus and how they solve them. So the program grew from 2011. It started with 10 centers at universities, at schools, but it was mostly at universities. And then it expanded across the country. Each center had a regional coordinator and coaches. Many of the coordinators and coaches were university lecturers or experienced teachers if it was at a school. The structure of the program was that classes were held every 2 weeks. Learners came to the center at the university or the school. In some cases, there even was funding to bring learners to the centers. If it was in a remote area and a school where learners had to come from regions nearby. The classes focused on non-routine problem solving, initially selected to entrance tests, but mostly the South African Maths Olympiad since the beginning was used to select talented learners, and this ensured a high level of potential as well as motivation. From the centers, then learners could, so this is the pathways for the learners from there. The learners could participate, if they were participating in the Siyanqoba program, they could participate in the South African Mathematics Olympiad. Another competition run by the SAMP known as the Actuarial Society of South Africa, team competition where groups get together and compete across the country, and it's just always very nice to see how these teams from the different Siyanqoba centers they were very competitive as who would win this competition. And eventually some of them even made it to the International Maths Olympiad as well as the Pan-African Mathematics Olympiad. They also were given access to some of the training camps run by the Maths Foundation, which are part of the Olympiad. And these were used to prepare the best learners for international competitions. I should also say, because I think grade 8 to 12, there definitely were examples where at times we included grade 7 learners in the program, if there was requests for that. So some of the achievements of the program. So between 2011 and 2019, I'm going to show you some data and things on the next few slides. So first of all, we definitely did see an increased progression between 2011 and 2009. The programs that increased the number of learners advancing to the higher rounds of the Maths Olympiad, and it also produced a steady stream of learners who represented South Africa internationally. So here are some of the key performance indicators for identifying learners with potential. You can see here the number of schools that was involved, so that whose learners were represented in some of the centers. So that's not the number of centers. That's the number of schools who were sending learners to the program. And you can see a steady growth. So that's steady growth. And the registered learners started in 2011 with 381, and with, I can't see the last slide there, but that is a lot, 851. So it grew quite big in those 10 years. The focus was on transformation. So the face of the learners representing South Africa in the international competitions was not really transformed. And so one of the aims of the program was to bring more Black learners into this level of coaching and training so that they could achieve internationally. And you'll see that that's also, so more than half of the learners were Black learners, and then white, colored, and Asian. We also worked on the representativity in terms of gender, so you'll see all across. Initially, we actually took in more girls than boys, and it was 50-50, at least 50-50 most of the time. And then the last thing here is just the percentage of Black learners in the program, because that was one of the funding requirements that we had to keep that high. So I haven't spoken about the funding yet. The program was funded by the Department of Science and Innovation, which at that stage it was called DST, Department of Science and Technology. Then it became the Department of Science, Technology and Innovation, DSTI, and now it's DSI, right? The NRF, they funded this program, the National Research Foundation, and they actually conceived the original idea of it and worked with the SANT to get this going. So here's just graphically the number of schools, registered learners, and Black learners. So I can't see my own slide, but the red curve is the number of schools. Can you read the lines? Okay, people online can see I can't see, there you go, thank you. So the learners registered is the red curve, and you'll see it initially climbed quite fast, and then it went down again, but ultimately ended up being quite high, almost 900 learners. And then the number of Black learners also grew quite well. Initially, then there was a bit of a dip and it went back up. And then the number of schools that were involved in the project also had the upward trend. There was a growth in 2012, which maybe coincides with the fast spike originally, that there were more female learners being brought into the program in the second year of its existence, but then it settled down to about 50. Right, now this is the centers, and you'll see that in total there was a lot of centers across the country, but they didn't all exist at the same time. And so initially we started with 10. You'll see that these centers had no learners, so I'm counting those at the top there. And it was University of Limpopo, University of Johannesburg, high school in Bloemfontein, then Rhodes University in the town, and University of KwaZulu-Natal, University of Pretoria, then a maths coffee shop in Kimberley, and the University of Cape Town. So that was the original start. Then the centers here at University of Stellenbosch and at a high school in Stellenbosch and another high school nearby in Paarl Gymnasium, they joined. So there were centers at school started. And also importantly, at Rhodes University, center was started in the township, and that increased the numbers there. But as centers were starting, others were not active at certain times. So you'll see this showing all along, more centers became active while others became inactive. You'll see the University of Cape Town stopped being active in 2013, and the maths coffee shop in Kimberley as well stopped being active. But we introduced new centers at Wits University. I was very involved in starting this one. It was here at the Center of Excellence in Maths and Statistical Sciences that we started the center. And because it was really important to get more center in Gauteng, which is quite a big, high population area. And then also in University of Denver. And this was really then Tengwe. I think this one was held at a school. And those centers ran quite well for most of the time until 2019. You'll see though that this green area is a lot of them that stopped operating except for some odd years. And some of the centers, the initial centers stayed operational right through. but not the one in the township of Rhodes University and the one at University of Johannesburg. So if you're looking at this, now this is up to 2019. I'll tell you just now what happened during COVID and after COVID. But if you see your university being part of this green band that stops, then please take note, because we would like you to help us get it back started. Okay. Also, what I'm going to be reporting on next is officially what SANT is still supporting at this stage, because the picture has changed because the funding stopped and COVID happened. But some of these universities, and I know specifically the University of Pretoria, they still carry on their own with their center. So the facilitators there are still doing their own thing, and there might be other universities that I'm not aware of that are doing the same thing. And if you are one of those places, please let me know about it, because we want to try and get everything together under one banner. Right. So this is just the total number of learners per center and the total number of centers. So you'll see that the centers plateaued at one stage, but the number of learners at those centers grew. Right. So some of the highlights and achievements. And this is too much for me to go out in detail, but most of this was measured in terms of what we managed in terms of international participation and changing the face, the transformed face of our international competitors. So this is just learners that were in the Siyanqoba project. Okay, so there were obviously more learners that reached the top 10 of the South African Maths Olympiad, because that it would be 10. But 3 of those in the top 10, so they were considered as runner-up. They received silver medals at the junior level. And 5 learners of the project received silver medals at the senior level. Then the next year, it grew at the junior level. We had 6 learners that were runners-up in the South African Maths Olympiad, and Arthur Kambi from UKZN Centre was the best performing African learner. And then, so you really have to understand that up to that stage, the top 10 were mostly white, mostly male. Okay, so these changes might, and well, this was more than 10 years ago. So in 2013, we had 4 learners that were selected to participate in the Bulgaria International Maths Competition. In 2014, 19 of the learners in these Siyanqoba centers were identified to attend the December Mathematics Olympiad training camp. And then 2015, Arthur Kambi was part of the Pan-African Maths Olympiad team that represented South Africa on the African continent, and he won a bronze medal. And also Malwane Mponyana and Oratile Mini received bronze medals for participating in SAMA round 2. So even the progression, apart from what won the top 10 prizes in the SAMA, the progression, the representation of Black learners at the final round of the South African Mathematics Olympiad was very low. And so these were important highlights for us at that time. Then in 2016, with Emotalo from UL, that center, not from the university, received the bronze medal for participating in the SAMO round 3. And Nico Mufana was part of the PAMA team that represented South Africa, and he won a bronze medal. Then 2017, Kaukelo Bopape and Mawando Mponyane were top performing Black learners for the round 3 junior and senior levels respectively. So Kaukelo was younger. So these 2 learners, specifically Kaukelo, I'll talk about a bit more just now. They were from Soweto, and they came to the BITS Siyanqoba Center. And they were also then that year part of the team that represented South Africa at the Pan-African Maths Olympiad. So the Maths Foundation sees the Pan-African Maths Olympiad. They don't send their strongest team there, they send their development team there, and they send their strongest team So it's absolutely on merit what they select for the International Maths Olympiad. And 2018, Mawande and Marizela Vichava received 1 medal for Samo round 3. Kapelo and Aaron Naili received a silver medal at the Samo. So that's not just for participating, that's being in the top 10. And Kapelo and Mawande represented South Africa at Pamo, and they won gold and silver medals respectively. So they were not yet being selected for the International Maths Olympiad team, but they were being developed for definitely growing towards that. In 2019, RMA was the overall winner of the South African Maths Olympiad. This is an absolutely amazing achievement, right? And Kakelo and Andy Q were runners-up in the Samo senior level, so joint runners-up. And that year, Kakelo then represented South Africa at the Pan-African Maths Olympiad and the International Maths Olympiad, which means he was in the top 6. I mean, the International Maths Olympiad is the top 6 learner. And that's because he won the gold at Samo in the senior level. Aaron Naili represented South Africa at the IMO as well, because he was tied runner-up, and he won a bronze medal. So in 2020, I haven't said much about the ladies, but Yana Rousseau, because we were also trying to get ladies onto the international scene. And Yana Rousseau received a silver medal for being a runner-up in the Samo junior level. So the ladies were coming up a little bit later, and we do have more success stories with them coming up. So just to show you, this is Kalkeri. And he made history in 2020 by actually being the first African learner ever to win a medal at the International Maths Olympiad. And you know, I think you stretch when I say this, because that was at this maths center where I'm standing now, which I helped to get started, at that Siyanqoba center, where he got his training. And we made history. And really the first ever. And I don't know whether many people are aware of it. Anyway, since this is Jessica, she participated in Siyanqoba since grade 10. And so she wrote the final matric maths exam instead of the paper set for the peers. So since grade 10, she wrote the matric maths paper, and she always achieved over 90%. And she was, I can't remember what center she was from. And then here is a St. John's College pupil. This is Andy P, who achieved 96.4 average in his matric, and he headed abroad to study computer science. I think Kakeno also studied computer science at UCT. Am I right? Or Stellenbosch?
One day I know studied it for a long time.
Well, one is studied at this. Anyway, so a lot of these students came to our universities to study further. And that was part of the strength of the program, that it was drawing really strong learners into our programs. And the program was really cost effective. So mathematics Olympiads are known to be one of the cheapest ways to develop interest and talent in mathematics. And the program was quite intensive, as I was telling you. It had facilitators and coaches at the centers with bi-weekly classes. Some of the centers even ran weekly classes. And this was the cost per capita for each of those years. So 851 learners at just over 1,000 were getting this very intensive coaching, leading to these great successes. Oops. Right, so just some more, these are personal testimonials from the learners. So one learner, Matthew Andrews, wrote to Professor Pillay, and you don't have to read the whole thing, I'll just highlight the main thing, that your lessons allowed me to learn much more. For the first time in my school career, I made it to the 3rd round of the Olympiad. The impact on me has been immense. Noluthandu Mzuza, another learner, said, at first I struggled with the challenging questions, but with regular practice, they became regular questions. This shows that the transformative effect of systematic problem-solving practice. Then, you want to read some more? Can I go? Are you finished reading? So parents also noticed, and one father, this is Ivan de Beer, we have permission, by the way, to share this. He described how all three of his children participated during the pandemic, and he said, your efforts have been hugely fruitful in learners. So that was up to 29. And then 2020 happened with the COVID-19 pandemic and the lockdown, etc. So, like so many educational initiatives and universities and schools, whatever, Siyanqoba was forced to adapt quickly. Face-to-face teaching was impossible. So the South African Maths Foundation improvised by shifting to online teaching and focusing training using the South African Mathematics Olympiad learners who qualified for round 1 and round 3. We were actually quite lucky that the first round of the Maths Olympiad was written in March and the lockdown started April. So we still managed to have that instrument to measure the talent and potential and use that. But the shift of focus, so it highlighted disparities. So going to online very clearly highlighted some disparities. We concentrated our limited resources on supporting learners who qualified for SAMO round 2 and 3. Unfortunately, this meant that access was restricted to those with connectivity and resources. The impact of that definitely was uneven, because in 2020, I showed you the statistics, more than almost 60% of the learners in Siyanqoba were Black learners, but in 2020, we had a very low progression of learners going from round 1 to round 2 in the competition, and not all of them were able to attend the online classes of the training anymore. So, because the training was focused on helping with this progression, that's why it dropped. And that's compared to 70% for Asian and white learners. So this highlights the continuing challenges in our education system. We had a similar pattern for the progression from round 1 to round 2 of, in terms of gender, where 51% of males advanced compared to 42.7% of females. And these gaps now, to this day, still remain a challenge for us to address. Nevertheless, it's not all bad news. So there were still some successes despite COVID. 18 learners progressed from Siyanqoba, right? So there were more in total, but 18 learners from the project advanced to round 3 in 2020. And the program proved that it could successfully adapt by moving classes and assignments online. So these are the statistics of the 18 learners that made it to round 3 of the South African Maths Olympiad, and they came from these centres. Something happened apart from COVID. We lost the funding from the DSI NRF. So it was not renewed. It wasn't just stopped. They wanted us to do something bigger to recover from COVID. They decided that they wanted to expand the Siyanqoba program and build on the successes from 2011 to 2019. And they wanted us to dream big, and we were at an average of about 10 centres. They wanted us to go to 50 centres. And they asked for funding for proposals in that. So we were very busy writing proposals, while at the same time we were trying to keep momentum with having no funding to keep the momentum going. We used surplus funds from the funding from the previous periods to continue running the online classes to support learners who qualified for the Maths Olympiad round 2 and 3. And in 2021, during that 21 learners, 22 of these learners qualified for the April Stellenbosch Olympiad training camp. Online training of coaches and facilitators was also done at that time using a course that was developed and online problem solving that was developed by Olympiad and analog. So the fact that COVID happened meant that we had to make some changes, and it wasn't all negative. That's what I'm trying to say. So it had a definite impact on the negative impact on the online classes, and thereby not being able to service the needs of students that did not have the ability to go online. For various reasons, they were in rural areas, they didn't have enough Wi-Fi, they didn't have computers, whatever. But we were able to develop this amazing problem-solving course that up to that time had been a physical course that was run over 2 Saturdays aimed at teachers that could come on Saturdays. And it was developed to a 6-week intense course, completely with a learning management system that was online, but also with tutors working with people in small classes. And we have put many educators through that course. We're running in the thousands that have done the course since it was developed 5 years ago. But also it was used to train facilitators and coaches since then for the Siyanqoba project. So the university lecturers, postdoctoral fellows, teachers that were involved in it. At the same time, also the other success that we achieved was that Professor Pillay had been writing a book, which he managed to finalize over COVID, and it was published. It's called the Updated 1000 Olympiad Province Manual. I mentioned it before. It is available on the SAMP website. This is a tome. It's like a really big book. That's it. And that is the main resource that it's the official training course that we now use for the MaSS Olympiad. So it's really worth having a look at it online and then see what it's all about. It's a huge, huge contribution to what we have available. You can change. So in 2022 then and 2023, we were still negotiating with the UCI for the funding for this expanded Siyanqoba. And they provided for those 2 years 800,000 for consultations towards that expansion. And we used that to keep the program running. And by maintaining the online training for the learners that were selected from the MaSS Olympiad. You can change. Slide, then the 2024 developments were that there was again no dedicated funding. So what happened is the DSTI, despite many problems, actually never made good on their promise of wanting to expand the Siyanqoba. The reasons for that are manifold. They decided that the funding would run not directly from them, but through the South African Agency of Science and Technology Advancement. And they never put out a call for us to apply. So it wasn't that we weren't in line to be funded, but yes, I didn't want to fund, they couldn't get the together. And so we again had no dedicated funder. But then came to the rescue, the DSI NRF Centre of Excellence and the Statistical Sciences that year, because they facilitators in funding that they had from DSI NRF for ring-fenced for historically disadvantaged universities, and that enabled us to train facilitators using our online maths problem solving course at HDIs, historically disadvantaged universities. So you can change. The initiative aligned strongly with the Department of Basic Education's National Mathematics Improvement Plan, which also aimed to address historical inequalities by training lecturers and postgraduate students to become accredited facilitators. this was mainly done for universities, but there were some teachers on this training program too, and we combined the cohort from the HDIs. So actually your funding didn't just cover HDIs, there were 600 in total that were trained with your funding. And many of them teachers at school. So you can change. So the outcomes were that more that we got new accredited facilitators that were at rural or universities that historically disadvantaged are usually in more rural areas, right? And so we were able to, the aim was that we would be able to reach learners that the Siyanqoba program had not previously managed to reach. So it also benefited the universities that there were stronger teaching skills among their staff and junior staff specifically. And it prepared us to establish Siyanqoba centers at the historically disadvantaged universities. Okay? The training achieved significant demographic transformations. So over 85% of them were Black participants, with strong representations from HDIs, and the main cohort came from Makati University, which had 41%, and then also strong female representation. By April, May then of 2025, now we're in this year, we managed to establish 5 online centers, Siyanqoba centers, at Port Hare, University of Mpumalanga, Walter Sisulu University, Sefako Makatu, and then a school, St. Mary's DSG, which is in KwaZulu-Natal. So these are only online centers at this stage, but they are brand new. And as I said previously, some of the previous centers are still continuing on their own. But these are the ones that SAMP is currently supporting. Each center has a manager and tutors, and these are their names. If you're interested to contact them, if you know some of them. I see there's a second one there that I didn't have on my previous slide. One was missing on the previous slide. Okay, maybe I just can't count. But these facilitators and center managers support learners by marking assignments and motivating continued effort that the learners are doing the training online. And Professor Pillay remains the academic coordinator. He still presents bi-weekly online classes. Mondays they are for grade 10 to 11 and Wednesdays for grade 8 to 9. The grade 9 also still includes some grade 7 learners. Learners receive assignments with tutors' marks, which the tutors mark, and then they ensure regular engagement while the centre managers are responsible for motivating the learners to continue working on the assignments. So in 2025, the online classes continued from June to October, so they're still in progress now at the 6 HDI centres. And all of this is being supported by Old Mutual through their sponsorship of the South African Maths Foundation, South African Maths Olympiad project. So rather than looking for dedicated funding for the Siyanqoba somewhere else, we spoke to Old Mutual and asked them to expand their funding for the Maths Olympiad to include this training. Right. You can go to the next slide. Now I'm going to end with the future plans. So looking ahead, the immediate plan for 2025 is to continue running the online courses as we are doing now. But the real milestone will lie in 2026. We aim to launch face-to-face learner classes at 5 historically disadvantaged institutions. This will significantly really broaden the access and strengthen the local capacity. And beyond this, we want to establish centres in rural and remote areas, reaching learners who seldom benefit from enrichment programs. And crucially, our focus will continue to remain on equity, ensuring that Black learners and female learners are given what they need to progress successfully. To achieve this vision, so let me just show you the vision first. So this is what the planning, so it's a smaller plan than the expanded Siyanqoba, which was going to be 30 centers, which ended up being probably too rich for anybody to fund, because if I recall correctly, it's going to be 6 million. Now it's going to be 15 centers, and there they are detailed. So if you are at any of those universities, please take note, because we will be reaching out for you. I think it's really, really important that we manage to get back to face-to-face teaching. You can change. So this is sort of the regional division, but this map actually is the original 30 centers, so it's not all of those flags on that map. We can go. So to achieve this vision, the face-to-face vision in 2026, we must prioritize the sustainability. So we have to secure long-term funding. We also need to deepen the partnerships, bringing together universities, schools, and key organizations such as SANS and LISA and the Department of Basic Education. Another important step or a connecting step is to build a research agenda to study the impact of Olympiad training on university performance, motivation, and STEM persistence. By embedding Siyanqoba within the South Africa's education ecosystem, we can move from survival mode to long-term growth, ensuring that this program continues to transform lives for decades to come. So in conclusion, let us step back and reflect. Siyanqoba began with just 10 centers in 2011. Today, there's a national program again that has touched over the years thousands of learners. It has survived the pandemic, it has survived funding gaps, and it's survived institutional challenges. Most importantly, it has nurtured mathematical talented youth who have gone on to pursue STEM careers at university. The program has shown remarkable resilience and a lasting impact. But the road ahead is not without obstacles, because sustainable funding remains one of our greatest challenges. Access still needs to be broadened, especially in rural and underserved communities. Equity remains a pressing issue with persistent race and gender disparities in Olympiad progression. You would have seen some news articles on that for the team this year. Not negative towards the MaSS Foundation, but negative towards the whole institutional the national landscape in terms of education, that is not reaching all equally. Because the face of the people in the top performers is not representative of the demographics of our country. So to succeed, Siyanqoba must become firmly embedded within the South African education system and not just simply treated as an add-on. If I can achieve that, I will be happy. So to achieve all of this, it's where all of you listening to me come in. With your support, we can secure long-term partnerships and funding to keep this work alive. We can expand the Siyanqoba centers, particularly at the historically disadvantaged institutions and the rural communities. We can also link the program more strongly to research to better understand its impact and guide future policy. Together, we have the opportunity to build the next generation of problem solvers who will lead South Africa into the future. And you don't have to wait for the establishment of a national center for mathematics to happen. You as individuals working at your universities can help us establish centers at your universities, and then we grow from that center. Thank you very much for listening to me.
The questions from the audience. There's one there.
I've been aware that Lab and Serene are running a future education program,
Yes.
which sounds very much similar to what Siyanqoba is about, but I don't really know the details of this future education program. I think it's being funded by Needland. I'm not mistaken.
We do know of each other and we do talk to each other.
Oh, okay. So is there a possibility that what, in the near future, we can maybe collaborate and so that you can share the resources instead of different humans doing different things that are very similar to each other, since we have such a small population.
Yeah, we should be. And we're not quite, the aims of the programs are slightly different. So, the South African Maths Society is running through Europe and certainly they're running the Future Maths. It's from the South African Maths Society and it's not, so the focus on competitions is what they invite. But the ideas are very similar, which is why I keep saying we should be calling the Siyanqoba program not the Regional Mathematics Olympiad training program, but the Regional Learner Development Program. I think because that's what it really is, and it shouldn't just be focused on establishing teams or growing our performance in international competitions. But it can be much more than that, and that's why I want it to be embedded in the whole system.
Thank you very much, Prof, for your wonderful presentation, actually. So, my name is Minakshi and I'm from Sol Platke University. As it's clear from the presentation also that we have been involved in this initiative in 2019 and 2020. But due to COVID, something happened. I'm not sure because I was still new at SPU. I joined SPU 2019 and then it stopped. Now, this year, being part of the Community Engagement Committee of the faculty, I was thinking to revive this program at SPU, and I was looking for a direction actually. So your presentation has really helped me to look forward. My question to you is that do you have any specific email if I have any queries which I should send it to you, because we are focusing on reviving it from 2026.
Okay.
So, yeah, thank you.
Area for interest. So I was actually told by the director yesterday, Professor Tutimoshopa told me that there's a center coming soon at Salt Lake University. So they are aware of it, but I think the best is if I give you their generic email address. So it's info@SAMED, SAMED dot, SAMED is also academic, so it's .ac.za.
Okay, thank you so much.
Forward me because yeah, my email address is a bit long to say. Info@SAMED is the quickest.
Okay, no, thank you so much. It will help actually. Thanks a lot.
For taking that initiative. I'm so excited to hear it.
Yeah, no, thank you. We'll reach you because I was still thinking that what is the first contact point. So I did talk to the previous coordinator. So it's still in pipeline, but we will be joining it soon. Thank you.
So my question is, the centers of the reports, so I'd like to ask, what is the reception with the local teachers from the different schools? How are they receptive? And the reason I'm asking is, I remember in 2017, I was a student, I was 3 years of a day student, and I would have a the program. So we do go to a remote area called group, if I would but so
I mentioned about the thousands of teachers that have done this 6-week online training for problem solving. And one of the aims of that is to get them to change how they teach in class, but also to motivate them to involve their learners in to expose their learners to the Maths Olympiad type questions, so that we have a wider reach in terms of where we can find all these interested, talented learners. But because typically the problem is that the teachers themselves are scared that they cannot do the problems themselves. And because there aren't centers near them, they become isolated. And I think that's why you see this dropping. And that's why I feel very strongly about trying to get more of these centers so that the teachers are also benefiting from the enrichment. It's not only for the learners. And so that we help the whole system become stronger. And addressing all the gaps. But keeping in mind that it's not teaching anybody how to teach binomial factorization, for example. It's not curriculum based at all. But so in the rural areas, the more centers we can get rurally at schools together. But for that, we really do need funding because they need that.
Hi, good morning.
Putting you on the spot.
Can you hear me?
Joining us.
Hi, Bruce, and good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Yes, I did have some difficulty in hearing the previous comment or question from the participant there. But yes, we do find that we've got challenges in terms of having teachers to support learners in competitions, because the expectations of competitions is different from what is happening in a classroom situation. And that is why you'll see in terms of participation, the numbers are going up and down, but we need everybody to come on board to appreciate the value of the competitions, that these are add-on what is happening in the classrooms. Of course, we know that in our classrooms, most of the things are done now mostly in a remote way, in the sense that learners are trained to answer certain questions in a specific way. They don't have to think outside of the box. So competitions and enrichments are bringing out a different way of supporting learners and as well as teachers. That's why the support is not only for learners, but also for the teachers as well, so that they can support these activities in totality. Thank you.
And thank you, Kerstin, for the very good thing. Thank you.
Thank you.